that too close? That's about right. All right. Nice job, Dr. Coke. Yeah, she's really good. I get treatments from her periodically, and just kind of a good reset for that neuroendocrine system. And again, I appreciate, I didn't have the inclination to learn that kind of medicine, but I've always had good results. So if you haven't tried that, I would say it's one of those constitutional supports. You know, it addresses the whole picture, and there's nothing quite like that other than homeopathy. I think it's so unique and effective. So again, I put, you know, we are kind of talking about our products, and we have a drawing for the 2 tinctures. So if you haven't signed your name to one of those little slips in the back and put it in the jar, we'll be passing out and giving away a couple tinctures. So we hope you win that. And then also, Marlene's, you know, is a store that has all of those, let's go back here a little bit. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to go back here a little bit. Some of the interventions I said as a naturopath that we might use, some of the 5-HTP, the amino acid tryptophan in the form of 5-HTP helps serotonin. It helps us make serotonin, so Marlene's carries that. GABA you can find is a calming amino acid, so if your mind is too wired, sometimes GABA is nice for sleep. Actually, I give that to kids sometimes because they're so wired they can't focus, and when I've used it, it helps me be more singly focused instead of multitasking in my brain. I like do one thing at a time, which is probably more efficient or effective. Tyrosine makes that dopamine. Some of the nutrition that supplements making those, all the herbs, she's got all those herbs here, and a lot of those are in combination. So I put out on the table up here some of Marlene's products. I just went through and picked out some that you might look at. I don't necessarily recommend you treating yourself. It is good to have a doctor's, you know, look at that, and if you're taking things, even bring them into the doctor and tell them what you've tried. When I see a person for the first time, I often say, bring in your bag of supplements, and you know, I probably 80% of the time like what they're taking. People are self-educated, we're all on Google doing research, and a lot of us are successful finding things that help. You do want to be careful though if you are taking an antidepressant or any kind of benzodiazepine, any kind of medication really, supplements will interact with those, especially when we're talking about the brain chemistry. So you should be very careful about self-prescribing if you're already on a medication, and definitely get some support to look at how those are interacting. So when we talk about making change, you know, most people have an internal guidance system. I think sometimes our depression, or my depression at least, was really a disconnect from who I wanted to be inside. You know, like I had this feeling about who I could be, but I wasn't that. You know, I was held back, I was shy, I lacked self-confidence, had, you know, negative self-talk. So this disconnect from who we want to be in the world and who we are sometimes causes our suffering. And I think we all, you know, I had one really wise doctor at school say, you know, there's so many different ways to treat depression, or there's multiple ways to treat hypertension, and they can all be effective. But it's, you know, it's that it's because every person is unique, and the imbalance for them is different. And I often think about body, mind, and spirit. For some people, it's, you know, 80% emotional and 20% physical. For some people, it's, you know, 50% spiritual and 50% physical. I mean, we all have sort of a unique makeup in where we become out of balance or how we haven't developed. So I think education is really, you know, empowering. And that's why I, you know, get nervous and put myself through this, because I really think, you know, that's what saved me. It's what resonated with me. So if you hear something tonight that resonates with you, you know, follow that lead. I really encourage you to use your intuition. And where does that intuition come from? You know, that's a good question. But I think we all have had synchronistic events or, followed a gut inclination or followed some advice despite what the outside world would have said. And, usually it pays off. But again, we need this language of emotion. Those emotions that we have, that really got me excited, that talk or something in the talk. That's our guidance system. So if we can turn into our emotions and start labeling them, you're going to do yourself, I guess that's the key, is start turning into those emotions. And ask yourself the story. When I got this dye and I started doing a little questioning, I had to spend 20 minutes doing that. And it was worth every minute. It was worth every second because I had a little insight, a little breakthrough. And, I think I have some direction on what I want to do now. But it takes time to do that. And so when we talk about a lifestyle change or integrating something into your life, a little thing that you do and put a time and attention into can make a big difference, especially if it becomes a habit. And, learning how to have compassion and patience. I think I just said that. One of the things I've learned in my own healing is never give up. And also with my patients, over time, we really see big dramatic changes. When we're talking about food allergies, if you give up a food for a couple weeks, you feel better, because I do detox classes and I see that. You give it up for a year and you really see changes. So that's what we're talking about. And that takes some compassion, it takes patience, and it also takes some faith. So I guess, body, mind, and spirit, I can't really do a talk without saying, it's important to have faith in something. And it doesn't have to be what I believe in, but there is, I think, in my experience, even as a naturopath, the healing power of nature, there's an underlying belief that we can heal, that we can be whole, that we can have internal freedom psychologically, emotionally, and even physically. So I think if you have belief in that and you practice things, and my dad was always a skeptic. He didn't believe in anything, didn't want to commit. And I just thought, even if it's not true, if you believe it, it starts shaping the way you project in the world, and it makes a difference. So that's what works for me. But I think, having some faith in that you can get well, even if it's me telling you I've seen miracles, in my patients and people in my life. And I'm a miracle, really, my own healing. So, after a while you start deciding you're going to just stick with what you believe because it seems to be helping. And what else here? I think opening up to someone is a really good way to start practicing this emotion that you're getting in touch with. There is something about having your story received and expressing it back to you. I've done a lot of therapy, but whether it's a counselor or a minister or a good friend or your mom, there's really something healing about opening up to what's going on in you. We all need to be seen. We all need to be heard. And when somebody can do that for you, sometimes it's the first time you've maybe learned to do it for yourself. I think the way I learned to have more empathy and compassion for myself was by people being empathetic and compassionate to me. I didn't really know how to do that for myself because I was really hard on myself. I had high expectations, and I never felt good enough. So the more we can shape that internal mother or internal father to be more supportive, the better. And if you can take care of yourself in transforming that, then you have something to offer others that's richer and deeper and more congruent. It really does come through. This part I've done in other talks. I'm going to skip that a little bit. It really is more about ways to express emotion. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about the message we get as kids. So be careful, you're going to get hurt. Well, little kids, remember I said 0 to 6, kids are in a theta brainwave state, which is very suggestible. What you're saying to kids and what they're picking up is being downloaded into their unconscious mind, and it becomes internalized. So when you say to kids, be careful, you're going to get hurt, the message to those kids and to their subconscious is, be careful, life isn't safe, right? Or don't say that, it might hurt your sister's feelings. Well, you're kind of really telling the kid that other people's feelings are more important than your own, right? Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. It really is discounting your suffering. So it's not convenient. This isn't a good time for you to be doing that, but I mean, really, those are the kind of messages I got. I did have a patient once, and I was helping him like shape new relationships. He wanted to have a relationship, and I was talking about, you know, if you could dream of yourself in a positive relationship, what would it look like? And I don't know, we had a few sessions together, and then one day he stopped me and he said, you can't use that word dream. And he said, I was in Catholic school, and the nurse used to come by with the ruler and whack it across my hand and tell me to stop daydreaming because I'm a loser. Or I'm a loser. I'm like, oh my gosh. You know, that was downloaded into his unconscious mind. He was stuck. He was having a hard time. What's going on here, Elizabeth? Restart to install. Oh, okay. Let me do that. Thank you. All right. So anyway, I thought that was pretty, you know, telling. And I do work with the unconscious now, as some of you know. So that was a pretty strong example for me. Again, we talked about where angers are stored in the body. The liver is often the organ of anger. When people do a detox and we start getting those chemicals being released from the liver or push the liver to start working harder, people get a little irritable. We always warn people, when you do a detox, you're going to be releasing some anger because it's actually true. And the lungs typically are an organ of grief, worry, tends to get into this digestive system. So we're, again, talking about these emotions. If you have an emotion, you can identify the emotion, then it doesn't have to settle into the body like that. It doesn't have to become somatized. But again, we often have habits of emotion that are common to us. And some of the techniques that help to release these, this is just, I happen to pull up several different things about ways to deal with the emotion in the body. This emotional energy release technique is where we have these points on the body that are sensitive to the organ or gland beneath where they lie, and the manipulation of energy can help balance that organ or help you deal with the feeling that's stored in that area of the body. Releasing emotions stored in the body. How many remember this prayer, the Ho'oponopono Hawaiian prayer? Has anyone learned that? Really? I learned this a long time ago. It's an intention to work on yourself or a relationship, and it's about clearing the energy of the past, traumas or hurts. And it's a Hawaiian prayer. It's a Hawaiian, something they do in the Hawaiian culture. And they believe that withholding forgiveness leads to disease and disharmony. And maybe we think of disharmony a little bit more like that Chinese medicine system. The chi is disrupted and how things are flowing. And it's really designed to make things right again. And so the prayer is, and you know, since I'm willing to forgive now and I want to get rid of my sty, right, I'm going to do this with that person, to myself every day. And I actually have used this prayer. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry, I love you, and thank you. And it doesn't really matter. Forgiveness doesn't really imply that you're allowing someone to hurt you or that what they did was right. It's just this intention really to let it go. And you know, when we hold on to things, it really is us, right? When they say when you point one finger at somebody, you have three more pointing back at you. So there is this beautiful prayer, I think, and I think I started doing that with that last election we had. That got me so upset. So anyway, I think I need to do that again. This was an interesting slide I found, and it's using essential oils, like the doTERRA oils, or, you know, I'm sure Marlene's has some nice essential oils, and it's using an oil with an intention over a certain body part, but associating the feeling with that body part as you use the essential oil. Now, naturopaths do have this connection with nature. Our interventions tend to be from nature. We use nutrition, herbal medicine, homeopathy, the Chinese herbs. So I love the essential oils, and there's a whole, whole body of knowledge if you ever get into that. They are very effective. And I even brought the Bach flower remedies, the rescue remedy. How many of you used rescue remedy? The little blue bottle, little yellow bottle here. Anybody use that? Just a little bit. So, rescue remedy's been around for a long time. It's a bit of a homeopathic. It's not really an essential oil, but it does come from flowers. And, I used to use it before an exam at school or when I did lectures. Actually, I used some before this lecture. I've got my own version. Just settles you down. The flower remedies are so soothing and so effective, and they're gentle. They're drop doses. They don't, they're not really a biochemical thing. It's the energy of the plant is able to soothe you and interact with your emotions. So remember, we talked about 50% of our mood being affected by genetics. So that's a pretty big, I think you can think about genetics and say, oh, geez, I know I got my mom's depression or I got my dad's anger or something. I'm stuck with that. But there's a lot of things that affect genetic expression, and I always like to talk about that. There's a whole body of science right now called epigenetics. And the epigene is the genetic material sitting right next to the DNA, our genes. And this epigene influences how the gene will be turned on or off. So if you have a gene for, preset kind of manifest diabetes, for example. The epigene influences if that's expressed or not, or how much. So, you may get diabetes because your parents had it, at 30. Or your epigenetics may be influenced actually by your nutrition, mostly. You may not get it, or you might get it at 80. So the expression of genes is not all or none. It's variable. And we influence how these genes are expressed by our nutrition and by energy. And so they found that positive endorphins, when you're in a state of being happy and supported and loved, all those oxytocin and all those love hormones are around, your genetics for health are regulated for you to be healthy. When you are falling in love with somebody, that's not usually when you get sick, when you're in that state, in the honeymoon state. And then if you're sad or mad, as these little kids depict, it also influences you. So that's kind of we've talked about the biochemistry of that, but we haven't talked about the impact on your genes. It definitely impacts the epigenes to help your genes be healthy or to be more susceptible to your genetic influence to be sick. So that gets me to this thought idea that really only about 10% of us are conscious. About 90% of our emotional state resides in the unconscious. That means we're acting out in our life, reacting to life from an unconscious pattern that our egos developed. And we don't really think about, that comment we make to our husband off the cuff, or, that reaction we have when we're driving. It just happens. It's coming up from the unconscious. And so I do techniques with people, and I've had techniques done with me where you tap into this unconscious emotion, because unconscious emotion is affecting us, if we're 90% unconscious, even more than our conscious attempts. So when I do emotion code, I do some muscle testing, and I ask questions of the unconscious. For example, what emotion in the unconscious do we need to release so Lynn's sty will heal? Or what emotion do we need to release so I get along better with my husband? So there's different ways you can ask, but the assumption is that there's an unconscious pattern that we've internalized that's become a habit. And if we could change that, then our reaction in the world, our interaction in the world would be different with ourselves and with others. The first time I did this, I had a mom come in, and she was a new mom, a new baby, and she had a toddler, and she was exhausted. And her biggest complaint was the toddler. She couldn't get the toddler to go to bed at night. So she would spend, 2 hours trying to get this kid to go to sleep. And so I did emotion code on her and asked what emotion in the mom, subconsciously, needs to be released so her little girl will go to sleep easily. And the emotion that came up was stubbornness. So the mom was stubborn, unconsciously. And guess what? That little girl, that 3-year-old, was picking that up. She was acting out stubbornness. And how often do you think, if you're around little kids, they're acting out your emotion or the emotion in the house, right? Little kids are like sponges. They pick up what's going on. They don't have a filter like we do. Their ego isn't developed. So anyway, I treated her. I gave a statement to the unconscious to release the stubbornness. And it's interesting when you release emotions, we go back to the time. For her, at what age did stubbornness become a habit in the unconscious? And it was about 5 years old. That's when she learned that pattern. And we released it. We asked the unconscious to release it so her daughter would go to bed more easily. She came back a couple months later, and I said, well, how's your daughter doing? Is she going to bed? Oh, yeah, no problem. I think she forgot we did the treatment, but I jotted it down, I knew. And so I do this treatment. A lady just came in today and said that made such a difference in my pain. She couldn't believe it. And people are open to it, but I probably do it with 90% of my people because unconscious emotion of terror, trauma, anger, any emotion is triggering biochemistry. So if you want to start seeing a shift, even a little bit of a shift, you have to work with the unconscious. And how many of you know about Dr. Emoto? He did all those experiments with water. And Dr. Emoto found that water is responding to energy. So basically, he did these experiments with water. He got water and he looked at it under an electron microscope, and it made these beautiful crystals, the clean, clear water. And then he got polluted water, and the crystalline shape of the water molecule was really distorted, kind of ugly. So then he did experiments where he had vials of water, and he'd put it by rock and roll music or classical music, and the classical music would be beautiful, and sorry to offend anyone, the rock and roll music would be rather distorted. And then he did experiments where he had vials of water, and he put words on it, like love and hate. And miraculously, the water with love had this beautiful crystalline shape, and the word hate had this distorted, kind of ugly crystal. And what are we, like 80% water or something? So he was sort of a scientist trying to demonstrate that consciousness really is, even like in Chinese medicine, it's not always in the body, it's even outside of the body, is really affecting us. And when sometimes, or for most people, where they really heal is when they're outside, right? Dr. Charlyne said, take a nice walk, be outside in nature. I mean, sometimes, I think her and I get breaks fairly often, so we're outside. We deal with a lot of serious problems that people bring to us, and for our own rejuvenation, for our own balance, we've just found we need to be outside. We need to have time to restore. And so nature really is kind of a nature cure. There's that little therapy dog. Oh yeah, and my husband. So, I think having an animal in the house, being outside in nature, there is something about the energy of nature, like Dr. Emoto found, that is real. It is soothing. It is healing us. And it cannot maybe be measured exactly, but we have scientific proof that it actually makes a difference. So when you integrate some practice for yourself, whether it's your decision to be outside, at least for 20 minutes a day when you can, think about the language that you have for your emotion and start verbalizing that language so it doesn't get trapped. Maybe work with somebody, start piecing together that unconscious emotion, and put that emotion somewhere outside of you. Writing, The Artist's Way is an example of, 20-minute, or you just write for a few minutes every morning. And sometimes I don't have time to write, but I probably 5 days a week will write for just a few minutes. Sometimes it's the first words that come to me. And there's another book I read that said, your first words come from your soul. Don't edit too much. So it doesn't have to be meaningful. And I said, just go get a notebook at the drugstore. And I told that to a lady once, and she said, wow, I can do that. It's those journals. I think it has to be so deep or has to have real meaning. No, just get a cheap notebook and just write your first words every morning, because it gives yourself a chance to be in touch with that intuitive voice, that part of you that you don't filter. And if you start practicing that, it gets you closer and closer to your soul, which is going to be your internal guidance system. If you do have something you want to achieve, maybe you want to really feel better in your mood, and that's why you're at the talk, make a vision board. Make a vision board. I did this for a friend who just got a new job, actually one of our new senators. And we were working with her, but now she got it. And I wanted her to, have that same fiery energy she has. But I wanted her to have enough money, and I wanted her to take care of herself, play, and I wanted her to be lighthearted. She's a little older anyway, and the last thing you need when you get older is more responsibility. I mean, you think about this age, you should have wisdom, you should have more confidence, and, just be more yourself. So I give everyone permission. You don't have to wait till you're 60, but the goal really is to be authentic. We all have gifts, we all have something to offer, and it's like, can we break through those barriers to just be ourselves completely and freely? So, we talked about, it sounds probably daunting that 90% of us are working from the unconscious mind, but we can do a little intervention every day to be intentional, to be conscious. And it only has to be a few times a day as a practice to override our subconscious patterns. So I like to teach people this technique called the one command. And the one command is about making an affirmation, a positive statement of intent about how you want things to turn out. So Elizabeth, I've got about 2 minutes here, and I'll wrap it up. But okay, so the one command is about making a statement to your unconscious mind about how you want things to turn out. Because if you don't take time to do that, it'll default. I'll default to be self-conscious and nervous and worried and, just my whole conditioning from my past could take me over. But if I make a statement of intent, like when I was working on this, I wrote, I don't know how, and my day flows with ease and support. I get my talk finished, it has a good flow. Plenty of stories as anchors. I relax into divine guidance. I only know this is so now, and I am grateful. So if I make a statement of intent, my unconscious has a new pathway. Maybe I could go down that path too. But if you take time to make this statement, whether you write it down or say it, it takes it out of, I hope I do a good job, to this is what I want. You have to see it in order for you to achieve it. So if you want to change your mood, you have to have some images of being happy, of feeling calm. It might be pictures, it might be words, but I encourage you to come up with those words. A lot of people just know what they don't want. I don't want this headache. I don't want to be so shy. But they don't say, I want to be confident, So you have to come up with those words. And as you do, as you make the statements, I tell people, okay, then let it go. Just be curious. There is this art of letting go, of allowing it to happen. You can't make yourself be happy, but you can put the intent out there. Today I want to have a positive day. I want to be effective, and I want to be relaxed by the time I get home. So try doing that and see how it works. Be curious. That's what I always say. Be curious. And even the idea of looking to say at the end of the day, well, how did that talk go? Did I get the stories in? Did people seem attentive? It helps reinforce your unconscious paying attention to that versus you go home and think, geez, I should have slowed down, I sped up, there's stuff I forgot. You know, instead of chastising yourself, you're getting your unconscious to be on this track where it's looking for the change you want because you've identified what that change is. So feeling and listening, imagining, creating, living out of our prefrontal cortex, trusting, accepting, having faith, and appreciating and loving. You know, appreciation, gratitude is the highest vibration. It's the highest state of energy. So even if your daily writing is thanking God for that new little granddaughter, or, you know, thanking God that your day yesterday went well and you want another one, you know, be grateful and you'll see that you'll get more of what you're grateful for. Picture of a little vision board, a little soul collage card I did when I first opened my office. You know, I really wanted that place to shine, and I wanted to bring the energy in. And that's kind of what we did. Our office is this healing center, and we have people that come, and really we've created good community there. That's my husband's little Lady of Guadalupe, got a big tattoo on his arm. I share him with another lady. And a spiritual or a community of support, you know, I think that's one of the things that will help you the most. Time out, time in nature. Sometimes you will never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. I don't know about you, but life is rushing by me. And I can accept when I have to be sad or anxious sometimes, but I want to make the most out of it. There's more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy. So I hope you heard something tonight that helps you, guide you. And again, Dr. Coke and I are always available. We'd love to hear from you if you have any questions or you'd like to see us.